And welcome to the stage, Bill Winter. Hello, Bill.
1976 in Maryland, I imagine a journey in Mexico. I'll get to Oaxaca, the big city of south central Mexico. I'll take the bus that travels the highway 200 miles southwest to the Pacific, but I'll get out halfway at a dirt road near the town of Miahuatlan, and I'll turn left. I'll walk for about a week, and then I'll turn right, and I'll walk for a week or two until I reach the Pacific. Now, I know what you're thinking. What is my obsession with microplanning? Well, nonetheless, I set forward to make this happen. I get to Oaxaca. I get on the bus. I get out at the dirt road near Miahuatlan. I turn left and I start walking. After a couple of hours, a young man about my age comes up to me, and I recognize him from when I got off the bus. He gave me the impression of somebody who was well-groomed, physically powerful, a big city guy. He didn't belong there, and maybe a criminal. And he said to me, "You need a guide. Hire me, and you'll be safe, and you won't get lost." And I said, "No, thank you." And he said, well, he tried to convince me, and I said, "I do not need a guide. I will not hire a guide." We walked forward a couple minutes, and icy, and then he turned around abruptly, without a word, and started walking back in the direction of the highway. An hour later, I was walking with a much better companion, a local guy, and he said, "Come meet my family." We went to his house, we talked, we ate, we joked, we laughed. I slept on their floor. The next morning I was up early, and the next 2 days I walked and walked and walked and walked. And there were plantings on either side of the hill. There was wheat and corn and garlic and garbanzos. And one funny thing, the further I went, the less the language was Spanish, which I could speak, and the more it was Zapotec, which I had never heard of. The next day, the houses started getting farther apart. And the road started getting narrower and rougher, and it went up a long hill and over a ridge between these two huge boulders. And when I was a couple hundred yards from the ridge, I sat down on a rock, and I was just resting, and there was this dry beauty and no people. And then I saw coming from where I had come, somebody to talk with. Got closer, and I realized it was this young city boy who had tried to get me to hire him as a guide. And then the penny dropped. He was a criminal. He had seen me get off. He had seen me on the bus. He had taken me for a mark. He followed me off the bus. He tried that guide gambit. When that didn't work, he did a head fake by pretending to go back. Now, with no help anywhere around, he was coming for me. And I began to get very afraid. And I decided the best thing to do was just to wait for him and deal with it then, because it wasn't going to get better further down the road. So he reached me, and I said, "Looks like somebody's been following me." And he said, "You are a thief. You hired me to be your guide, and you aren't paying me." I tried to talk him down. He tried to work himself up, and he was sizing me up, and he was getting ready to attack me physically. And it got harder and harder to hide my rising terror. And the moment I was preparing myself for a very unequal combat. And then, coming through that pass on a horse was a man. And he and the horse came up to him, and everything about this man and the horse was splendid. His gear, his saddlebags, the rope on his saddle, everything. And this was a person of authority and of humility. And the city boy said to him, "This man is a thief. He hired me as a guide and he won't pay me." And the horseman looked at me. I told him what I was doing, and instantly he understood perfectly, better than many of my friends in Maryland who thought I was just nuts. So he turned to the city boy and he said, "This man has come from far away to see the beauty and nature that God has given us here and to share fellowship with the people of this region. And he does not need your help. You must leave him alone." The horseman's charisma was massive. It was like an energy wave, and it lifted me. But the city boy, his posture slumped, and his face sagged, and you could almost hear voices inside him arguing, voices of resentment and shame and confusion. And the spell was broken. I knew I would never be afraid of that person again. And he turned around and he started walking down the highway, and I didn't care, towards the highway, and I didn't care if I ever saw him again. And then the horseman said to me, "You know, I think I know these hills better than anybody, and I don't know of any houses out there. I sure don't know of any trail to the Pacific, but if your heart tells you to go on, I know God will look after you." And then he and the horse went on. And then I thought about everything. And then I turned around and I walked for 3 days until I got to the highway, and I turned left.